First of all, hello guys, and welcome to another episode on Maven Talks. I'm your host Rakshit Kharbanda, and before we start, you already know the drill. Do subscribe to the channel. We are just close to 200 subscribers, so let's meet the mark of 200 subscribers and maybe more today. Today we have a speaker amongst us whose name is Mr. Nikhil Jain. Nikhil Jain is currently working as a strategy consultant at Arthur D. Little in Dubai. He pursued his master's in management from ESSEC Business School in France, where he focused on strategy and finance through coursework and internships. Nikhil is enthusiastic about businesses in general, specifically businesses that aims to solve day-to-day problems that people face but don't notice. He spends his free time traveling, writing, and playing basketball. Yeah, you are live now. Hello.
Hi, Rakshit. Thank you for the introduction. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
All good, all good. Thank you. And thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much for being here. So let's just begin with the questions. How about your early days? Like, how was Nikhil in his school days or while you were doing your graduation?
Okay, so I would say that in my school days, I was a very typical, I would say a slightly above average student. And I was very actively involved in sports back then. So I used to play basketball a lot. And during university, during when I started off college, when I started engineering, I started to better appreciate the importance of academics. So I started focusing more on academics and grew on that front with every year, but also started exploring various kinds of extracurriculars. So, for example, I was involved in the MUN society of our college, and I was involved in a couple of entrepreneurial ventures, mini entrepreneurial ventures, I would call them. So, one was a portal for students of our college, in fact, to share notes and to connect with other students. So it was called Semester Hacks. And the other one was Wellness Energized, which was more of a preventive healthcare initiative. So yeah, that's the kind of student I was like back then.
That's how some of like I'm also involved in a lot of activities in college apart from being an above average in academics as well. So that's great. And while you were applying for abroad, like, did you have any other options in the back of your mind? Basically, like people generally go for options such as MBA or maybe go for a job or something like higher studies. So have you had any options, or you were like clearly focused that maybe going for masters is something I want to do?
So I would say that when I was towards the end of engineering, I would say in the third and fourth year, I was very clear on three things. The first one was that I want to go study abroad. So I want an international experience. The second thing was that I want to pursue a management degree. And the third thing was that I want to pursue that degree from a well-ranked college. So I did not want to compromise on any of these three criteria. So that's the goal that I had when I was applying to ESSEC among other schools. But of course, I had a backup in mind. I was sitting for campus placements, and fortunately, I got a placement with a very interesting firm, ZS Associates. So that's the backup that I had in case things don't work out. And the plan was that if they don't, I'll end up going to ZS, work there for a year, and apply again the next year.
Okay, and what all countries were you looking at? Like apart from France, were there any?
No, I would say that when I was looking at colleges, I looked at it. I looked at them from three perspectives. So the first one was the ranking of the program, the overall ranking of the program. As I said, that I did not want to compromise on the ranking of the college. I wanted to go to a well-ranked college. So that was my first criteria. The second criteria was the program structure. So what I mean by the program structure is it a long program? Is it a short program? Are you supposed to do internships as part of the program? What kind of courses are they offering? How am I supposed to select those courses? Do I need to follow a rigid curriculum, which is the case with many schools in Europe, which is the case with many schools in the UK, sorry? Or is it a more flexible program where there are a bunch of electives that I can choose from, which was the case at ESSEC? So yeah, that was my second criteria, program structure. And my third criteria was employment options post completion. So that again, I was looking at it from two ways: employment options within the country itself. So, for example, within France or within UK, as well as employment options abroad. So I realized after looking at all three criterias, I realized that schools in France are best meeting all three criteria. So they're well ranked. They're long programs that allow me to do internships as part of the program, and they have excellent employment options. And France lets you stay up to 2 years after completing your degree to search for jobs if you're unable to find it during the program, of course.
When we talk about European countries, they are actually, in terms of culture, they're actually very rich. So, how was your experience in France as an Indian student?
Yeah, that's actually very true. I think I enjoyed my time in France a lot. And to sort of elaborate on this, I'll talk about it from two aspects. So I'll talk about the professional aspect and how France was different from a professional aspect compared to, let's say, the US or UK, and then from a personal aspect. So talking about the professional aspect, I think that when you're studying in France or in any continental European country, so maybe it's Italy at Bocconi, maybe it's Spain, so any of these schools, you are exposed to very different companies than you're usually used to hearing. So coming from an Anglo-Saxon country, a country that follows the Anglo-Saxon system, sorry, we are very used to hearing the American brands. We're very used to hearing the British brands. So British Telecom, British Tobacco, or the American brands, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and the likes. We're very used to hearing about them. We're very familiar with them, and we've sort of internalized these names, these businesses in our lives. But if I talk about France, if I talk about Italy, if I talk about Spain, if I talk about Germany, these countries have some amazing companies out there that we don't usually hear about. So it exposes you to a very different kind of economy. It exposes you to an economy that is based on industrial companies. So these countries, they're famous for their engineering companies, right? So you have Airbus in France that's making aircrafts. You have a bunch of automobile companies in Germany that's making that are making amazing cars. You have so you have a bunch of Italian car companies. So it's very different from the kind of companies that are, let's say, making it big in the US, which are mostly tech companies. So it exposes you to a very different kind of economy. So that's the professional front. Talking about the personal front, which is, I think, a more interesting aspect over here. So France is a great country to be in. I spent about 2 to 3 years over there, and I got to travel a lot within the country itself, and it exposed me to a completely new culture, to many different people, to amazing food, and of course, French wine, French cheese, and lastly, I sorry. So yeah, so and of course the language, which is something that I something that I pursued actively and I absolutely loved. So that's one aspect, that's the France aspect. But when you go to continental Europe, it's very easy to travel to neighboring countries. So I had a chance to travel to Belgium, to Netherlands, to Italy, to Germany. So yeah, that's an additional aspect to it. So you get to see a lot of different cultures when you go to any continental European country. So I'd say that the experience was very positive for me.
Oh, that's really great. And if, say, we talk about, like, particularly your course, like Masters in Management, being in European countries, people generally see communication as a barrier because you need to learn a different language. And especially in Masters in Management, communication is like a great aspect of your whole degree because you need to communicate with the teams well. So, what was your uptake on that? Like, did it serve as a, like, first of all, did you know French, and did it act as a barrier or not?
Okay, so let's look at this question in two forms. So firstly, let's talk about did I know French, and then let's talk about is it a barrier or not. So talking about French, yeah. So as soon as I made up my mind that I want to pursue a master's degree in France, I started taking classes in Delhi itself. So I started taking classes at Alliance Française in Delhi. I took classes for slightly more than a year, so I had a decent level of French when I went to France. But I think it was decent enough for me to read and write. But speaking and understanding is a whole different ball game. You cannot learn that in classes. So if I talk about that aspect, that's something that I practiced once I had reached France. So once I was there, I practiced speaking and listening a lot. So listening, I used to watch a lot of TV shows. So I started off with watching cartoons for children because that's the kind of vocabulary that you have in the beginning, and gradually paced myself up to sitcoms and soap operas in French. Talking about speaking, I put in a lot of effort into trying to do my day-to-day tasks in French. So ordering food, getting a haircut, that led to some very terrible haircuts, by the way, because it's not easy. It's a completely different vocabulary that you need to use over there for administrative tasks. So all of those things, and that really helped me a lot. And I think I'd say the end game in refining my French language was pursuing two internships where the working language was French. So that really exposed me to the professional vocabulary in the language, to talking in a more refined manner, to talking in a more formal manner. So that's about French.
Okay.
Coming to French acting as a barrier. So basically, as when you're at school, it is not a barrier because you're going to attend an English program, and all the courses are supposed to be in English. Your peers are supposed to communicate in English, so that's not a barrier at all. But when I talk about living in the country itself, so if you're living in France, then it is to some extent important that you speak at least some French. So you, because you'll end up going to the supermarket, you'll end up going shopping for clothes, you'll end up going to restaurants, you'll end up going to tourist destinations, and I hope not, but you might end up going to a hospital for a minor issue, something or the other. All of these things, they'll be much easier for you, much easier for you if you have some command over the local language in the country, because you cannot expect people everywhere to speak English in a continental European country. So that's about it. Talking about it strictly from a job seeking perspective, you can, in most continental European countries, France and Germany in particular, it's not a huge hassle to find a job that does not require you to speak fluent French. Where you'll basically be working in English, so it's not a huge hassle. There are plenty of opportunities out there in all kinds of domains, so that's doable. But again, they would expect you to speak some kind of French to gel with everyone in the office, for being able to participate during lunches that are only with your French colleagues, for example. So yeah, some level of French is needed, but it is not absolutely mandatory to be 100% fluent.
Okay. Yeah, like that was very explainable, and like the way you structured it.
Thank you.
So, when you went for, say, a course that is like that is basically non-technical, like you have subjects like finance, consulting, and all those. So, was it in the back of your mind while, like, even before engineering, or like talking about my scenario, I always wanted to be an engineer in since class, say, seventh and eighth. And
Mhm.
after that, while I like I came to college. Now after 3 years, I want to go for positions where I could maybe lead teams, manage them, like communicate with people, because
Mhm.
I feel like I'm more of a people's guy or people's person. So did it did that change, or did that eventually change in college only, or you wanted to actually go for maybe a management position altogether, like after doing engineering?
Okay. So if I understand it correctly, you're asking whether I had clarity on pursuing a management degree during engineering, like right from the beginning, or was it something that I evolved into as part of the journey?
Exactly.
Okay, so I would say that I got this clarity at a relatively early stage, because because by the time I was in the final year, I was already applying for colleges, and by the time I was in my third year or towards the end of my second year, I was already taking the GMAT. So there was some kind of clarity that was always there. But I would say that when I had entered engineering, I was not 100% certain about what I wanted to do. I knew that I'm interested. I knew that I had an interest for businesses. I knew that. That is one possible option. I had seen people in my family pursue that option, so I knew that there's a good scope in that option, I would say. But I was very open towards the beginning. I learned how to code. I got involved in all kinds of societies. I pursued. I mean, I actually tried to learn computer science. That was a subject I was pursuing, information technology. But yeah, I actively pursued that. I pursued. I pursued my interest in businesses as well. But as I kept progressing, I realized that computer science is great. It's something that I enjoy. I like coding, but businesses are something that I enjoy more, and that's what I would like to pursue as a long-term career.
Okay, and like while you were doing your engineering, not a lot of people go for management degrees. So
Mhm.
when you are taking a road that's less traveled by, you often doubt yourselves, or maybe it feels a little scary.
Mhm.
So how was it during your time? Like, were you always motivated person, or maybe you always had that doubt that I don't know, like, or maybe was it scary for you, or you used to be a self-motivated guy?
So I don't know if it's the road less traveled by. I can't. I don't think I fully agree with that, because I mean we literally have an excellent movie on the fact which makes fun of this fact that engineers, they start off with engineering, then they do an MBA, and then they start working in a bank. So and if you look at, let's say, IIMs, or if you look at any of the top MBA colleges in India or abroad, a sizable portion of the batch comes from engineering colleges. So I wouldn't say it's a road that's less traveled by. I would say that career options post engineering are so diverse that if you pick any one of them, it would seem like it is less traveled by. But to answer your question, so I'll tell you what my motivation was to pursue a business degree. And because I was clear about my motivation, as a consequence, I did not really worry about not a lot of people pursuing that option or anything like that. So I basically had two ideas in mind. So the first one was that I was very passionate about businesses, and the second one was that as a consequence, I wanted to, after doing some research, I realized that I want to enter into a business advisory role. So let's touch on them one by one. So passion for businesses comes, basically what I'm trying to say is that I thoroughly enjoy reading about different kinds of businesses, how they're changing the way we live our lives, how they're changing the way the world operates, and that's something that I enjoy a lot. So to give you an example, I in fact have a friend from school who created this amazing brand called Cadence Music, which is manufacturing musical instruments. What they did is that if you go to if you go to a store to buy musical instruments, you typically cannot touch and play the instrument before actually buying it. You're sitting behind this wall, and you're supposed to tell them what you want. They'll show a couple of pieces to you. You need to make up your mind. You need to buy it, and then you can actually start playing it, which is a bit weird. It seems a bit weird, but nobody was complaining. That's how the industry worked. What these guys did with Cadence 5 or 6 years ago, I think, is that they created these experience stores where you can go in, you can play the guitar, you can play the ukulele, you can play the drums. I mean, just have a good time. If you like it, buy it. If you don't, no problem. Just leave, come back again, play the instrument again, do it for 5 days. If you still don't like it, not a problem. It's an experience store. So you're supposed to go there to experience the product, and if you enjoy it, then you buy it. So that completely changed the way people looked at musical instruments, and I think a lot of more many more amateurs picked up the habit to play a ukulele or a guitar during the last 1 or 2 years as a consequence. So that I enjoyed reading about his business so much that if I recall the last 6 months, I've probably spent more time reading about his business than actually talking to him. So that's the kind of passion that I had for businesses, learning about businesses, business models, which inspired me to pursue a business degree, a management degree. Now, talking about the second aspect, after looking at all of this, I realized that I want to pursue a business advisory role. That boils down to two key roles. If you look at employment options post completing a management degree, which is investment banking, and strategy consulting. So investment banking, it is a business advisory role where you're advising on financial aspects of the business. And strategy consulting, it's an advisory role where you're advising on strategy aspects of the business. So these were the two roles that I was looking into. And after I got into ESSEC, after I started taking courses, I realized that I'm more inclined towards strategy, and that's the direction I finally took. So, because I was clear on my motivation to pursue a management degree, it did not bother me if it's the road less traveled by or more traveled by.
Okay. And ESSEC, like you were talking about ESSEC being one of the top most of premier business schools in the entire world. How were you able to crack it?
So, okay, so I think getting into your dream business school involves three steps. So we could say that it's a three-step process. First is to really understand the school and understand the program. So I would say first is to understand the program. I mean, what is the program actually offering? How is the program structured? What are you getting as part of the program? What are the courses that you're getting? What are the experiences beyond coursework that you're getting? What kind of colleagues will you end up with? So it's really understanding the program that you want to apply to. The second thing is understanding the school. So what kind of values, what kind of traits does the school, what kind of traits does the school value? Sorry. So for example, if I talk about ESSEC, ESSEC is all about the pioneering spirit. So ESSEC is about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship does not necessarily mean starting your own venture. It just means having an entrepreneurial spirit within you, going out of your way to solve problems, to tackle challenges. So that's actually the tagline. I think it was changed last year to something very similar but new. But yeah, that was the tagline back then. And then the third aspect is, if you feel that you're aligned with the first two things, then presenting your personality, presenting your profile in a manner that communicates to the school that you are actually aligned with this, that you're actually aligned with the school's program, with the school's values. So for me, what I understood was that what ESSEC had was a super flexible program in which you can select which courses you want to take in which trimester. You can decide whether in each trimester you want to do an internship or you want to pursue courses. So it's really very, very flexible. So that's something that was amazing for me. The second aspect was that ESSEC, as I told you, it values the pioneering spirit. So I really felt that it's very aligned to what I want for myself. I'm trying to explore different things. So a flexible program is going to be interesting for me. And I like to go out of my way. Or at least I think I do, but I mean, I like to go out of my way I like to get out of my comfort zone to really expand my boundaries, to try new things, to grow as a person. So I felt that I'm very aligned with the program. So that's how I structured my application. Of course, you have the standard things which you can do nothing about, like your GMAT score, your grades, so your GMAT score, your grades, your LORs, that completely depend on the people you have worked with. But then, of course, the key part of your application is the statement of purpose, the main essay that you're supposed to write. And that's the thing that you need to spend the most time on. That's the thing that needs to be aligned with the first two aspects that I talked about. So yeah, I structured it in a manner that really shows me as a suitable candidate for the school. The school liked the story, and that's how I got in.
Yeah, like when it comes on to SOPs and essays, did you seek any outside help or you did it on your own?
So I did seek outside help, but I would say that the outside help was so there's two things to the SOP. One is really the content that you're putting in, and the way you're presenting it in. And second thing is working on the fine grammatical issues, maybe writing a sentence in a better manner. So basically, my outside help was restricted to the second aspect. I was, through discussions with friends, through discussions with colleagues, with my family, I was quite clear on the story that I wanted to present. But at a certain point, I felt that it might be great to have a professional look at it and help me fine tune the wordings to really make it stand out.
And you gave GMAT and IELTS, I guess.
No, no, I only gave the GMAT for ESSEC. So basically, if your undergraduate degree is in English, then you don't need to give an English language test for ESSEC at least.
Okay. And how like did your GMAT go?
So the GMAT, it went surprisingly well. I scored in the 99th percentile, so that was great. I think I was very comfortable since the beginning with the mathematics aspect, being an engineer. So I got the highest possible score there, but the verbal aspect, it's quite challenging. The verbal aspect for GMAT is quite challenging. So I was able to perform well, but yeah, it was not the best performance, I think, on that front.
Okay. And did you prepare for that on your own only, or did you take up any courses, maybe online
No,
or?
yeah, I took courses with Jamboree, so it's an institute that prepares you for GMAT and GRE. I don't know if they prepare you for other courses as well, but yeah, I took a weekend course over there, so it was an 11-week long course where we had 6-hour classes every week for 11 weeks. So yeah, I took that course, then had a long break after that. I think 6 or 7 months. After that, I prepared for about a month or 45 days. I think 45 days, and then took the test. So
Uh,
yeah,
so ultimately, it took like 3 months, or yeah.
so 11 weeks, you're not really studying consistently. You're only studying on the weekends. You're only attending classes, and I was doing the bare minimum homework that they gave us. So I was really putting in the bare minimum effort during the course itself. But after that, once I decided that I want to take the GMAT 45 days from now, that's when I really started preparing every single day for multiple hours.
Okay. So there's a question from Piyush Gupta. I'll rephrase it a little. Did you face any failures during this whole preparation, and maybe like your in life in general, and how did you deal with them?
Okay. So I would say that so when you're applying to, let's say, the most premium institutions in the world, you need to make yourself stand out. So you need to be, I mean, if as we say it in French, you need to be the creme de la creme. So if you want to present yourself in that manner, you cannot really, you need to make sure that you have performed well in every aspect of life. And that's if I talk about my experiences, then my performance in class 12th exam, and I'd say the first year of my undergraduate degree, it was, I wouldn't say it was a poor performance, but I would say that it was an average performance, which, when you're applying to the best of schools or the best of companies, translates into a sort of failure. So I'd say that that's something that I had to overcome during the later years of my undergraduate degree and then my master's degree. And the way I say I did that is I tried to overcompensate for it by actively pursuing other activities along with academics, of course, because anything you do, anything apart from academics, is by definition extracurricular. So it's never going to fully make up for your curricular or your academics. But then, of course, if it's in the past, it's in the past. There's nothing you can do about it. Look forward, try to focus on what's ahead, and try to make up for it somehow by pursuing other aspects.
And while studying in France, were you able to take up any part-time opportunities to maybe cover your daily expenses?
So I did not do any part-time job as such, but at ESSEC you have these teaching assistant roles where you can work with a professor. I mean, you can either work with them on a course that they're teaching and you have already taken. So you help them with grading assignments and grading the final exams, or you can work with them on, so the professors at business schools, they are usually PhDs, and they have their ongoing researches as well. So you can also assist them with their ongoing research. So I did a mix of both of these during my studies to sort of fund the ongoing expenses.
Okay, and since MIM is a 9 to 16 months degree typically in countries like US and UK, in comparison to that, like your course was 36 months.
Mhm.
So, how beneficial do you feel that extra buffer or extra time you got was helpful to you?
So, Rakshit, I would say that that was in fact a prerequisite for me. I did not want to go for a short course, and it was basically for two reasons that I actively looked for a longer course. The first one was that it gave me a lot of time to gain clarity on what I want to do ahead. So, if I talk about my first 1 year at ESSEC, my first 1 year at ESSEC, I had a decent level of clarity that I want to get into finance, investment banking, or strategy consulting, like I told you. But these are two very different jobs, and you cannot. I mean, there are people who do it, but it's not practical for you to apply for both of these jobs at the same time, prepare for both kinds of interviews at the same time, and then convert them. It's a very difficult task, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to do that because you're going to lack focus on both aspects. Now, during the first year at ESSEC, I did not have that clarity. I did not know whether I want to go for one or the other. That's something that I developed later on. So I think this longer course gave me time to gain clarity on where I really want to go. The second aspect is that as part of a longer course, I was able to do a bunch of internships. So I did a total of three internships that spanned 1 year. So in my 3 year program, I was actually interning for 1 year. And that I think was very important for me because I was pursuing the master in management degree right after my undergraduate. So the only experience I had was two summer internships that I did after my second year and after my third year. Now, by doing this 1 year of internships in an international setting with renowned companies, I was able to have relevant experience on my CV that drastically increased my chances of converting full-time roles, and that helped me gain a better full-time role than I would have been able to get had I gone to LBS. I mean, that's something that I feel. Maybe it's not true. Maybe I would have gotten the same job after an MIM degree from LBS, but that's what I feel, and that was the rationale.
Okay. And after completing your MIM, you moved to Dubai to take up a business analyst position at Arthur D. Little. So, what were the reasons? Like, you didn't look for a job in maybe France, and like, were any difficulties that you faced finding a job there, or is it like you found a better job in Dubai and that's why you just moved there?
Okay, so the thing with the kind of roles that I was looking for, so advisory roles in investment banking and strategy consulting, is that these are client facing roles. So you are directly working with the client to sort on a project or on a deal to solve the problem that they've come to you with. As a consequence, and then the second thing is that these tend to be very localized. So if you're based in France, then you're working with clients in France. If you're based in the UK, you're working with clients in UK. You might be working with them on international problems, but your client would typically be based in the same country that you're working in. So as a consequence, these roles don't tend to hire non-native speakers. I mean, you need to be very close to a native speaker to get into a strategy consulting firm in France or in an investment bank in France. So if I talk about Arthur D. Little, the company that I'm working with, they have an office in France. But I know for a fact that the level of French that I had would not get me into that office. Of course, it's clear that I have the other skills that are needed for the job because I'm already working with them, but the language would be a big barrier in getting into those jobs. And I felt that that's a barrier that I don't want to face. I don't want to compromise on the kind of job I'm doing simply because of a language. I understand if I don't have the technical capabilities, if I'm not suited to the role, that's fine. That's something that I'll work on. But language is something that's going to take decades to build, and I don't have that kind of time. Nobody has that kind of time. So that's a limitation that I did not want to face. So I was focusing my my job search in the UK and in Dubai. Fortunately, I was able to get an offer in both of these geographies, but I ended up choosing Dubai because of a couple of reasons. So, firstly, the company is better renowned. The job profile is more in line with what I was looking for, and it's closer to home, so it's beneficial for me from a personal aspect as well.
Okay, that's great. And were there any challenges like getting a job in altogether a different country or something like that?
I would say that whenever you're going to an international business school, you need to prepare yourself for the fact that you'll have to really go out of your way and put in a lot of effort into getting a job. I'm not saying that it's easy over here. I'm sure that, I mean, getting a job is, especially in this environment, in the COVID environment, is an extremely challenging task. But the thing is that what's great about India is that recruitments are very well structured, in the sense that campus recruitments really solve a lot of problem for you, because you don't need to spend a lot of time and effort into getting the interview. You need to focus all your energy into cracking the interview, and that's something that's completely different over there. I would say that about 60 to 70% of my time was spent in getting the interviews, and only 30 to 40% of it was spent in actually cracking the interviews. I'm not sure if it's better, if it's worse, but it's just the way it is. So over there, when you're looking for jobs, and especially during COVID times when you can't really meet people physically, I would say that it actually got better to some extent, because finding a job in France and finding a job in Dubai essentially involved this exact same process, because I couldn't meet people physically. I had to schedule virtual meetings. I had to talk to them over the phone, over Zoom, over Google Meets, whatever. So the process of getting the job in France and Dubai or UK became exactly the same. So I would say that actually made it slightly easier to some extent, but I wouldn't say that it was not challenging by I wouldn't say that it was not challenging. It was an extremely challenging task.
Okay, and if you were to do it all over again, what would be the things you would do differently? Like if you just got a chance to maybe go a couple of years back, land back into the BBP, are there any things you would have done differently?
I would say that I'm quite happy with the way things have turned out. So I wouldn't want to change the path that I took. I would probably still want to do a management degree. I would probably still want to do it from an international business school, and probably still want to pursue the same career options. However, I would say that the kind of motivation and dedication that I have had towards my goals in the last couple of years is something that I did not have. I would let's say in the first year of engineering, or the first half of the second year of engineering. So if I am to change something, then I would want to go back there and instill in myself the same motivation and the same determination that I somehow got a couple of months later.
Do you have any advice for people out there who are still like preparing for their interviews, or maybe like preparing for exams for going for a master's or something like that?
I think I can share a very interesting interview tip, which is which is something that I had no idea about in engineering. And if I and I would have loved to know this back when I was in engineering. So what I'd say is that whenever we're giving a job interview, or whenever we're interviewing with any firm for a job, for an internship, as students, as engineering students, or I'd say as undergraduate students, we tend to be very formal in the way we're presenting ourselves, because that's the way we think it's supposed to be. We think that it's supposed to be a very, very, very formal discussion. You're wearing a suit and tie, you're sitting over there, your back straight, all of those things, talking in a very formal tone, trying to avoid cracking any jokes, or anything like that. But that shouldn't be the case. Of course, you're not supposed to talk to an interviewer like you would talk to a friend, but at the same time, you need to make sure that the discussion that you're having is a fun discussion, because that the person that's looking to hire you is, at the end of the day, trying to see if you have the technical capabilities, but at the same time, they're trying to see whether they're willing to spend 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours in an office with you. So you need to present that side as well. You need to present a fun personality as well, to indicate that you're not just all work. Of course, you have all of those things on your CV. You have that last section on your CV that I like to travel, I like to hike, I like river rafting, all of those things. But you need to present that in your discussion as well, that you have that side to yourself. And that's something that I did not do in my interviews, by the way, back when I was in engineering, and that's why I think it's relevant tip to have in mind.
Well, that's all from my side. Thank you very much for joining today, and the way you broke things into categories and explained them, it was really very informative. So thank you very much for taking an hour and maybe joining us in this episode.
Thank you, Rakshit. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the audience who were there throughout this session. And we'll see you in next episode.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.